So one of the things that we want to focus on when we're thinking of parenting, we're thinking of staying connected with our partner, is this concept of emotional regulation. And so, emotional regulation, you may ask, like, what is it? Or what am I talking about here? So, emotional regulation is the primary focus and definition or the term for how we process and regulate our feelings and our emotions. And so earlier I talked about how we're modeling these behaviors, how we're kind of exhibiting them in front of our kids, in front of other family members. And so this becomes a process from an individual perspective that really helps us focus on how am I coping with the feelings that I'm feeling. And so when we're modeling and as we're working with the child in the development phase, it is really teaching them of how to emotionally regulate themselves as well. Now, it's a little bit harder for children to use emotional regulation. And so this is where parents play a vital role of teaching them, modeling them, how can I regulate my emotions? So we know that emotions can really impact the way we think and the way we behave on a day-to-day basis. If we're strongly feeling anger about something, and we are not able to process them, or we're not able to find that healthy coping mechanism, then it may become exhibited in an area of our life that we don't want to. Normally, this takes place at home, and this is a safe place for all of us. So when we're able to process and the way we're able to regulate those feelings, it is always going to be helpful. Now, we can also need some assistance in sometimes regulating some of those positive emotions that we may feel. So when I say positive feelings, I'm sure some of you are a little bit confused. So there is a possibility that we may feel something, too happy. Or we may, in a social setting, that's, again, that term of how do we regulate in certain settings. So how are we, if I'm happy about something, now if I was just to like laugh for 10, 15 minutes, because it's super funny to me in a setting, I may get some weird looks. But this is the concept of emotional regulation, is how can we process and really just at times just kind of minimizing those negative ones, amplifying those positive ones, but also just finding that good balance of how to feel and the appropriate amount of time. Now, with the negative feelings, we can also, I'm not going to say you should minimize them because they're unhealthy, but I will say is it's normal for us to feel angry. So if we can feel them, reflect on them, and move towards that coping aspect, that is the focus here. So we really need to look at how are we regulating these and where am I teaching the children at home of how to regulate the feelings, because they are, again, imitating, picking up on what you're modeling. So a little bit about the research of emotional regulation has shown that adults who have higher skills of regulating some of their emotions are actually known to have decrease and lower impact of anxiety and depression. And the reasoning being is, mainly we're able to, or these individuals are able to process those feelings, they're able to recognize them, and they're able to just kind of move forward from what that is. Whether it is, seeking support, whether it's seeking professional help, whatever that support may look like, or even just kind of talking it out with their partner of this is my frustration. So that communication piece is coming back in. This is the frustration. This is what I'm upset about. So really objectifying it and talking it out with another individual is a level of regulating these emotions as they come in. So it's really, really important how we're talking about them and where we are in the setting in terms of if we're around the kids, how are we modeling for them? And so research really, really shows that, we can have a decrease in some certain anxieties and certain stressors if we're able to just regulate our feelings in the time and place. And looking at the future, the long-term goal of this, that anxiety may not even set in again, because we'll be able to regulate the feeling before it even gets to that point where we feel anxious about something or we feel angry about something. So being able to recognize and regulate at the onset of it, it's going to help down the road. So some of the helpful skills that adults can use, number one being self-awareness. If I can identify what am I upset about, what is happening for me in this time and place, why am I reacting the way I'm reacting? If you can ask yourself those questions and identify, we're becoming a more self-aware. And science also says when we become self-aware about something, we're able to address it sooner. We're able to think outside the box sometimes of, okay, what does this look like? And so we can have just not the self-awareness, but also kind of like the mental awareness of what is happening, just being mindful and using some of that mindfulness in terms of what is happening for me right now, noticing where, the anxieties may be or what am I feeling, and just being very aware of what's happening. And the more we can identify, the more evidence that you have of why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. And there are certain techniques coming from the cognitive behavioral theories where we're able to use some of that thought stopping, where you actually physically have that self-talk of, again, asking those lines of questions and just kind of stopping that thought from spiraling out of control. We're also looking at kind of like that role reversal, or we're looking at how can I view this from another perspective that, okay, what would I tell my friend when I'm feeling the way I'm feeling right now? If I wasn't the one feeling this, what would I say? Another thing, a helpful skill for an adult is the adaptability. And so when we're able to kind of learn, okay, how did I overcome this last time this happened to me? How did I adapt? And so again, we're making this bank of ideas. We're making this book of future resources, a mental book, if that's the safe thing to say. So you're really looking to, how did I adapt in the past? What did I do to help me? I know this has come up for me before. And so when we're able to do that, we're able to also allow some of that self-compassion to come in is, hey, it's okay for me to feel this way. And I've come across this before in my life and I've overcome it. And so it's okay for me to feel. I'm a human being. I have feelings. And so never try to minimize the feelings that we have. And so the more we're able to identify, the easier it does get to kind of regulate some of the feelings that we're feeling. And practice makes perfect. And so practicing this over and over and over again is only going to help down the road. Emotional support is another great resource. And this is really helpful if you have friends, family, if you're seeing a therapist. And so this really helps receiving that emotional support. Some things in our life are going to be so stressful, anxiety provoking, that sometimes we just need to talk it out. I mean, I know I feel a lot better when I talk something out, and it helps me not become so reactive. And then so when we have that support, we have a person that we can kind of talk our ideas out to, or sometimes we just need to do that word vomit where we're just kind of talking, we just need someone to listen to us, and we're able to get it out. And so when this happens, it just helps us as we go further to knowing who I can reach out to. You're identifying resources, supports, but then you're also making time for yourself. And again, that compassion, that self-compassion is coming through where you're doing something, that self-care is coming through like, hey, I need this. So you're recognizing and you're actually following through with what you want to model for your children, right? We want to model some of these things where they can learn like, hey, it's okay to ask for help. And the more I can ask for help, the more they can see like, hey, sometimes we need that, right? We can't just solve everything on our own. So it does help for having that emotional support intact. So I know we've talked a lot about how we can incorporate some of this emotional regulation for yourself. But most importantly, how can we model these behaviors for the children at home? And another big thing that we can incorporate that's really, really helpful for kids is when we're teaching emotional regulation to children, it's good to help them create their own emotional vocabulary. And so this is going to be, again, we can incorporate this with playtime, we can incorporate this with routines, and it's going to be for the children to pick up and learn new ways of voicing and communicating those emotional needs. needs. One way that you could do this at home is just creating a chart. And what's the best thing that children can respond to or navigate is just having pictures of some kind. So it's always great to just have, different faces of different emotions. And so having a sad face with the word sad, an angry looking face with anger. And so this way the child is able to put a face to the word that they're actually feeling. So sometimes there can be a lot of confusion with kids of what they're actually feeling versus what they're communicating. And so having a chart or having something that can build their emotional vocabulary will help you understand what they're going through, will help them feel more comfortable sharing what they're going through. And so both of you, again, are connecting, you're getting on the same page to address what are some of these issues.